The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, direct to you on Patreon, or if you're listening later on public, this is Force Center and a special Other Center look at Indiana Jones. We call it Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcasts. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and I am very happy to be here on this quest, this obsessive quest to discuss all of the Indiana Jones films. Perhaps, Ken, you and I can discover what is the real treasure of us going on this journey. Is it rewatching the films? Is it connecting with listeners about Indiana Jones? Is it recording the podcast? What's the real treasure to you so far?
The treasure to me so far is to really spend time with a franchise, a character, and movies and stories that I've just spent my whole life with, but really haven't slowed down to break down scenes and lines and find out really what it means. It's all there, and I go, yep, that's what I thought, or yep, that's what I've always considered, or oh, that's new, or there's little facts that pop up. There's some in this movie. But that's been the real reward for me. A search of facts, and here we are getting the truth.
Exactly. No, I really agree with that. I'm really enjoying getting other perspectives from you and from some great responses when we've been posting these on Patreon, asking other people about their relationships with the films. But I've just really been enjoying discovering the actual archaeology of the films, the Spielberg history, the Lucas history, the everybody involved history, but also just getting to dive in and sort of compare and contrast, because it is a franchise unto itself, but the films are so different from one another. And I don't think I've ever really appreciated how different they are, and that's helping me understand even more things about myself. You have to look in the mirror and go, now, Temple of Doom has some problems. Why do you love it so much, you weirdo?
That's a great point too. Just on especially the first three, and actually all four, but the first three are obviously lumped together for various reasons, good, bad, and otherwise. But I've always looked at them as like one thing, right? And then to see they're clearly different eras within the 80s, right? Like you could feel, and this one comes out smack dab in the middle of some things that are important in my life as well, and has that feel. So I connect to it from that way. And this looks like an early 90s film to me in a wonderful way. And I had never really slowed down to look at it from those angles as well.
Yeah, no, there's so many different ways to hold it up to the light and turn around. So let's start holding it up. We are talking Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, released in May of 1989, an important time in Ken's life, and mine as well, honestly. It runs about a little over 2 hours runtime. The story is by George Lucas and Menno Meyjes. Menno Meyjes is responsible for uncredited work on, I guess, Empire of the Sun, credited work on The Color Purple, an episode of Spielberg's television show Amazing Stories. And then the screenplay is by Jeffrey Boehm, whose credits include many 80s movies that I haven't seen, like The Dead Zone and Inner Space, and 80s movies I have seen, like The Lost Boys and the Lethal Weapon series.
I love Inner Space. Oh, gosh. I did know he wrote that. I forgot. Kind of forgot that, though, in the back of my brain. Love Inner Space. That makes even more sense. There you go.
I gotta check out Inner Space. I have one episode of I'm forgetting the name of it. A famous science fiction magazine that was the 10th anniversary, Starlog, 10th anniversary of A New Hope, and that's the cover story. But then within it is a preview of the James Bond film, The Living Daylights, of Inner Space. And so I read about Inner Space because I read that magazine front to back again and again. I've never seen Inner Space, and there's a character named Scrimshaw in it, so I gotta watch that damn movie.
Oh wow! Oh, it's been a while since that one.
Yeah, and then the film was directed by Steven Spielberg. Do you have any reaction to these credits? I think I always associate the Indiana Jones series, with some of the great Star Wars team with Lawrence Kasdan. I didn't always remember that there's a slew of different writers. Is that something that stays present in your mind, or how do you feel about it?
No, I think it does not stay present. I think that's one of the things to this podcast series has helped me kind of remembered with Willard Hook and Gloria Katz doing Temple of Doom, right? Like, and then the connection to graffiti, it all makes sense and everything, but just those kind of names got lost in time, right? Especially this one, Jeffrey Baum, Menelaus, like you said, and very much of its time too. You're coming off of big movies. Inner Space was kind of big at the time, I think. But Color Purple was this award winner, just makes a lot of sense. But then the names kind of drift away from the legends, don't they?
They really do. They really do. But that was great to see and great to read a little bit more about these writers. And I can't wait to see many of the movies I missed from the 80s, which is a lot of these credits. I had a weird childhood, everybody. So what prep did you do? I know this is one of your favorites, and I know you rewatch it like you drink water. So how did you go about watching it for this discussion?
I had accidentally prepped by watching this a couple times over the last few months. Even I think when we were kind of getting ready to do this series, I put it on one day, and it is like water. It is that movie for me. But yeah, I did what I always do. I sit down and I pull up all the notes I can from the fandom wiki page for Indiana Jones or just Wikipedia. And I didn't have time to watch. I do want to watch that 4th disc doc that you've been referencing that I saw years ago. There's stuff out there, and we always talk about that. But yeah, just sit down with the movie, watch it this morning, take notes was the simple prep. But in truth, the prep began about 1989.
The prep is ongoing. Yeah, I've been so enjoying rewatching these films and just feeling like it's the summer of Indiana Jones for me. Movies pass much faster, and we're so much more tied on to everything that's going on in the world and social media, which I think is a good thing. But when you and I were young, a movie would hit, and then that would be the 2 or 3 films of the summer, and we don't have as much of that. But all this rewatching is making me feel like, for me, this is the summer of Indiana Jones. That's what I'm going to remember. That's what it's about. So I'm really enjoying watching these and wanting to make time to watch them a couple times, and I don't have the time. Yes. So it was honestly a scramble for me. I've been looking forward so much, and I ended up being like, these are the times that I can shoot it in on Tuesday. Before we were recording here on a Thursday, and I watched it in 2 parts, a Tuesday afternoon with coffee, and then some evening time with my wife, and then late night second half with whiskey. And I have my ritual that I like to watch these things with action figures, and I have my my Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark retro action figure. I forgot to put them out for the first half, so it felt like I'd been missing a part of my ritual. So the whiskey and the action figure watched the second half of this with me, and it felt right. It felt complete.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've been slowly picking up Indy toys when I can in the Target toy aisle lately, and I'm eyeing the Marion in the white dress figure that's out there. So maybe by the time I get to Crystal Skull, I'd love to have that Marion watching with me. Oh
yeah, the Marion's gonna be coming to my home because the monkey really puts it over the top.
It really does.
I went to a Target intending to buy the German mechanic, but his card was all beat up, and it was a very funny conversation. Like, I can't buy the German mechanic; he's too beat up. Yeah. So this one was really fun for me to rewatch because there are parts of it that I really, really remember, and parts of it I'm always like, exactly how does this all fit together? But in particular, getting to sit down and watch this after such a critical examination of Temple of Doom and really enjoy this film as its own film, as a conclusion to a trilogy, but also pretty viscerally a response to Temple of Doom. And the behind the scenes, I also made time to watch that on that 4th disc of the set I have. And it's much shorter. It's about 35 minutes. There are a couple of, kind of important to the history of it things where, Sean Connery is interviewed about how much he was, he wanted the character to be more eccentric. He wanted the character to be more adventurous and really pushing for those changes. The funny interview about him talking about not wearing pants in the Zeppelin conversation scene. There's a section of Harrison Ford talking about how he did get the scar in real life, and in a real hand wavy way of like, it's a car accident in 22 or 23, or wrap my car around a telephone pole. So there's some great stuff on it, but then there's some really funny segments toward the end where obviously Steven Spielberg, visionary. But there's some of those really funny documentary moments toward the end where he's talking about the themes and the ideas, but he's just listing exactly what happens in the film. And I love that when that happens on behind the scenes, like, we know, we all saw that Indy was trying to grab the cup, but his father pulled him up. We saw that, Steven. So you did not miss as much on this behind the scenes, is my point. All right, let's get into the big picture. So I know this is one of your favorite Indiana Jones films, maybe one of your favorite films, period. Yeah. Where does it rate for you? Is it the best for you?
Yeah, it is absolutely the best for me. As we said earlier in the Raiders episode, I think I consider that the best in the series in terms of filmmaking and achievement and all that kind of good stuff. It's a different vibe, that Raiders film, but this is my favorite to watch. Whereas, Return of the Jedi connected with me at 7. I really wanted to figure out, why did this one connect with me? And I think the Jedi thing in 83, being 7 years old, that kind of started my dreams, right? And this film came along at an age, I think, about 12, 13 range, finishing junior high for me. Came at an age when I was really ready to make those dreams come true, right? Like, I'm approaching high school, like who you are is starting to emerge, who you want to be is on the table. And I want to go out and have adventures, and not necessarily these type. Maybe I would have loved to, cracked a whip and worn a cool hat, but I just wanted to go be me. And I think that's where the vibe comes from this, what connects to me to this film and that era. It truly is the 12-year-old on about to start the journey and make those choices and all those things that George talks about in his other series. This one kind of shows up right smack dab in the middle of that time period for me. I also mentioned earlier, but it comes in the same era as the Young Guns movies that I always mention. Young Guns 1 was 1988, Young Guns 2, 1990. And these movies they look and feel like Young Guns, Last Crusade does. Like, they're shot in that era when, just like Raiders in 80 looks like a film shot in the 70s. Temple of Doom is a big 80s movie with all kind of the 80s tropes that would emerge after it and some that already existed. This one has the feel of everything that was going on at the time too. So I just kind of love that era. And, I've ridden horses a few times. I'm not great at it. So Young Guns and this with a lot of horse action here. Not for me, but the feeling, the vibe and the connecting with the bigger world was definitely present.
Do you feel like part of what hooked you in was that it did start with Indy at an age much closer to your own and going through something that you were going through of about to take your first stumbling steps into adulthood? Did that make you feel closer to Indiana?
I think on a subconscious level, right? Like, I definitely couldn't have pointed to the screen and said that in the summer of 89, but that definitely worked, right? That's a lot of things we'll be talking about, what this film is about. And I mean, that is the age. Just like I am of the exact age that the TV show Wonder Years ran, right? Like 6th grade to 11th grade, like every year was my year. Oh, exactly. So I connected to the show on am I watching my own life type of way. And so, yeah, I absolutely think that it works in that way. Absolutely. And talking about forming who you want to be and who you're dreaming of being. It all kind of shines through in that opening.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. It's interesting when the film came out for me. That was it was 8th grade for me, and that was a really there was a big year where I stepped into my own and felt a little bit more powerful and felt agency. That's a weird way to say it. I felt powerful, and not megalomaniacal, but just the amount of power we should all feel of being ourselves an agency. And I was socializing a lot. And I kept choosing socializing over doing things that I would have normally wanted to do. I never got to see the Indiana Jones films because they were too scary. But my dad and my brother went to this one. And I remember being super excited for it. I was a huge James Bond fan. So this was Han Solo meets James Bond. Yeah, I want to see that. But I chose some social event. I don't even remember what it is now. And then I knew from the commercials that it was, a dad and son story. And then my dad and my brother went without me. Then pretty soon after it, we must have rented it on VHS, because then I saw the whole series. And I wasn't like super resentful of it, because I made the choice not to go. But I think there was maybe subconsciously a part of me that was always felt a little distant from this film, like it wasn't allowed to be mine, because I didn't have that experience, and this experience was about a dad and a son bonding. So it was really nice to watch it this time and be like, okay, rip all that wiring out of your head, rip out the wiring that, you don't have this memorized like other people have since 1989. So, I think I had a little bit of that, you're not a true fan, gatekeeping of myself. And it was really great to just rip all of that out and just interact with the film and own my fandom.
That's wonderful. No, that would be hard. It's a great father-son adventure. Not for you. Soon. Wait your turn.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a good relationship with my father, better than Indy. So it wasn't even that. But yeah. Anyway, I really really like this one. I think it is up there with Raiders and just the best made, the script, the performances, the cohesion of ideas, the number of iconic lines and locations, great set pieces. I think I'll need to re-see Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but this film is bonkers funny. It is the funniest of the films by a lot, in my opinion, and the most heartfelt. So I really, really love this film for what it is, but particularly on this viewing, with the direct contrast to Temple, I do miss a little bit of the pulpy, weirder, darker elements. Like those got turned to 11 in Temple of Doom, but I think they're present in Raiders. I think they're present in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And this film feels like it was such a reaction to how Temple of Doom got much darker than even Spielberg and Lucas intended, that it's racing on a horse in the other direction. It's not a subtle course correction. Young Guns connection is right there. It feels like a Western. Two of the biggest set pieces take place in Western locations with horses involved, but the color palette, the locations, like the darkest it gets is there's briefly lightning over a castle in Europe. That's as dark as it gets,
Yeah. No, when I think of this movie, I think of sun. I just think of sunlight. That's what I think about all the time when I'm in the mood to watch Indy. Is it Moab, Utah, or is it the desert outside of Petra, Jordan? Like, you're absolutely right. And maybe we can bring it up a little bit later in little quibbles and things that we might think years now. But the fact that it is such a clear reaction to. It's a fan. I mean, Indy Temple of Doom was still well received and well rated. It still made money. Like it wasn't like it was a failure. But for Steven to react so directly to that kind of stuff, and also maybe what was in his heart, which is his right as an artist, that's one of the things. Like, I wonder what he would have done if he just had removed that piece a little bit. Could there have been a little bit more what you're talking about? Because I do agree, it is slightly different than the other two because of that.
Yeah. Reading between the lines on some of the behind the scenes things I've been watching or reading, there's a quote somewhere from Lucas about for Temple of Doom, he was so concerned about losing Spielberg. And there's the discussion about how Lucas said, hey, if we're doing this, you got to commit to 3. I want to do a trilogy. Right. And that there was this real concern about losing him for Temple of Doom and getting him in time. And I feel like, maybe a part of what Spielberg felt like Temple of Doom got away from me a little bit is that more a sense of like, yeah, I'm happy to be doing Indiana Jones, but I am doing it because I told George I'd do a second one. And now we're doing the second one. And there's so much about The Last Crusade that Spielberg, it feels like it's not just a tonal thing. It feels like Spielberg saying, I need to be personally deeply connected to this film. This needs to be my film, not me executing George's idea.
That's actually, I'd love to hear more about that, like out there, sit down with Steve and ask that, because this does feel the one that's not least George. That's not the right way to say it. But yeah, exactly what you said. That vibe of just like Stephen going, cool. Here's what I want to do. And part of the legends around this movie are the different versions, the Chris Columbus script, all those kind of things. Castle. So those kind of become there as well. And I think Jeffrey Boehm is the one who kind of, puts it down on paper in the best way. I think Tom Stoppard comes in and does some ghostwriting too. I was reading with a lot of the dialogue, but it's a Spielberg film, as the other two were. I don't want to get the cinephile here, but this one, the spirit shines through.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe one of the things that I really enjoyed about it on this viewing is that on one hand, it is absolutely Spielberg's film, and on the other hand, it is also very George Lucas. Obviously, he's the credited story by it. Many of the story elements are his ideas, so there's that just factual thing.
Yeah,
but it feels like Spielberg because the father-son relationship, more humor, more heart. Once you've seen The Fabelmans, because I just didn't know Spielberg's life, but I was a huge fan of The Fabelmans, and The Last Crusade reads like a Fabelmans prequel, or like I'm not ready to tell my real life story, so I'll tell it with archaeologists and Nazis. But so all these things that make it feel like this is Spielberg's film. But there's also this huge Lucas component because Last Crusade is a setup for the television show. It feels like there's the Lucas obsession with prequels in that opening scene of sort of explaining and setting up things. It's hard to not watch The Last Crusade as just a backdoor pilot for the TV show. And I don't mean that as any dismissal of the film at all. It's just like about a year ago, I watched the first chunk of the Indiana Jones Chronicles where he's a kid, left off right when he's becoming a teen. But there's so much in this film that is directly picked up in that show. The father and son relationship is very present. Everything that's happening when Indy's a kid is that he's being forced to study and his distant dad is away. There's a real friction between being an academic and an adventurer. Indy's mom dying, Indy leaving home are pivotal, important moments. So it's a Spielberg film, and it's a Lucas setup for his obsession with prequels and teasing out these ideas. So maybe even ideas that about that father-son relationship that Lucas was initially like, I'm not sure about that. He was very sure about it when he made the television show.
Fascinating. Yeah, you and I were talking off air. You just recently watched it. They're all coming to Disney Plus. We believe they're going to be what you described just as the only versions left from George when he re-edited them into films. And I actually think I really like that decision, but I just spent a lot of time looking into them this week for another project I was working on. And I can't wait to somehow discuss those. We don't know if we're going to go through all 22 episodes. It's fascinating because that is George to the core and really gives the insight to where he was going with Star Wars.
Yeah, it really gives insight into Indiana Jones. But the Young Indiana Jones television show is a prequel to the prequels in terms of the ideas, the technology. The cast just keeps being, well, there's Shmi, there's C.O. Bibble. Here we go.
Right.
So, I would love to find ways to discuss it. But Spielberg's film emotionally, and maybe Spielberg's film when it came out in 1989, but with the legacy and the history of the television show, also very much Lucas's.
Yeah, indeed.
Final overall thing that I want to talk about before we get into the heart of the ideas is I just love the Bond legacy coming full circle. The infamous story we've talked about on the beach of Spielberg saying, I want to do a Bond film, and Lucas saying, I got something better. And you can absolutely see some of the Bond inspirations in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's also its own thing. And then I was really struck by Temple of Doom has a lot more of the scenes and beats and moments that you expect from a Bond film. So I really like that this came full circle with, the original James Bond, Sean Connery, not only in the film, but Sean Connery using his fame as James Bond to play against type. And that I think if you'd never heard of Sean Connery before, the film is still funny. But when it comes out in 1989 and Sean Connery is James Bond and the one of the first action stars who had the later in life comeback and is still a badass in every film. to have him play against type is a huge part of what the joke of this film is.
Yeah, absolutely. The eccentric version that he's playing. I love even just the stories of him kind of putting his own thoughts into the writing and creative process in this one too. He really knew what he wanted to do. If he was going to do it, he was really going to do it.
And he did it. And it is, to me, one of the greatest parts of the film. All right, let's get into the big ideas then. For you, what are the themes? What ideas are at stake in this movie?
Yeah, let's go to the scoreboard with Spielberg and see what's in the film here. I absolutely. Letting go is a big one for me, as described by Spielberg in that scene. But you play that idea of letting go, which is a big Star Wars theme as well, of course. But you play that against the search for eternal life, right? And every man's dream, right? Says Walter Donovan, of not letting go, and that's. He doesn't quite state it as unlimited power, but Hitler can take the world. He'll go the way of the dodo, and I'll still be here because that's really what I want. And that's kind of the big version of it there. But in that, I think Indy and all the stuff we're going to talk about with his father, it's absolutely this big ticket idea of letting go of pain and resentment, and not necessarily forgetting, but forgiving and working forward. I think there's a great moment with Dr. Jones finally coming around and even say the name Indiana comes at a very key moment, which is about his version of letting go of what he maybe hoped for his son, or what he hoped to have with his son, or what he felt he never could. All those kind of big ticket items all wrapped up for me in this search for the Grail. And that leads to some other big things as well. But without a doubt, it goes beyond too. And I'm so curious. I definitely have to watch that doc to see specifically what Spielberg was saying. I'm so curious. But the letting go, it's not just big power, dark side, light side type of stuff. It is, this glory, this item, this relic's fingertips away from you, and that's how it kind of plays out. But really, it's all about that moment of Indiana, let it go. It's such a beautiful moment. That's the big spiritual moment for me that kind of fuels a lot of the other things that are in this film for me.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying is beautiful of tying the pretty explicit message of letting go of the cup to letting go of emotions. Indy's great in this film because he's just a raw nerve the entire time,
whole time,
rattling. And it is Connery's delivery is so great; it's so soothing. Let it go, and the idea that he's. It's not even that he wants the cup, really. He knows better. He was just telling Elsa to not reach for it, but it's more like that the way you're describing it to me gives me this great visceral feeling of, what if you could just reach out and grab something that would calm all of those voices in your head about all those doubts and fears, and it's almost like that's what's calling to him. And I love connecting it to the emotions. In terms of what Spielberg says, very similar to what you said, but you said it a little bit more elegantly.
There you go, Steven. There you go. I got you. And one Spielberg 242.
Yeah, not. I'm just joking, because it's clear he's clearly an artist who knows exactly what he wants and exactly what it means to him. It's just a funny interview moment. Because they're playing the clips and I really agree with you. I think letting go is crucial. I think it is crucial that is what Donovan wants out of it is eternal life, the opposite of letting go. I also just feel like connected to that, and you're talking about this as well, the biggest picture thing to me is just this idea of what is the real treasure. At the time that this is made, it's the end of the journey. They agreed to do a trilogy. Yeah. And the films, starting with the title of the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, have questioned what Indiana is doing. Why does he want these treasures? Where do they belong? What are they for? Who do they belong to? We talked a bunch about Temple of Doom. The Shankara stones are not a source of if somebody else taking power from them, they are defense and protection, and they belong where they belong. So I feel like it's powerful that this film is a question of, well, what's Indiana going to go after? And Indy it's not a realization halfway through for Indiana Jones that he's not after the cup. He's never after the cup.
Never.
He's literally practically the plot. He says it. I don't care about the cup. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for my dad. And I think for Henry Jones Sr., he's been obsessed with his quest his entire life, and it's only in this adventure that he gets so many other treasures out of it than finding the cup. It's a reward to find the cup, and hey, have it stop him from dying.
Yeah.
Sure he's happy he saw the cup and it saved him from a horrible bullet wound. But I think what he gets out of it is a reconnection to his son, and also I think an awakening of himself. So I think the film is explicit, but also has some great nuance about asking, what is the point of all this treasure hunting that these films have been about?
Yeah, a lot of that is embodied for me in Kazim from the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword. Like I love his appearances. It's he's not in the movie a lot, of course, but the intensity that he has, and just kind of really laying on the line for Indiana. Why do you seek this? Why do you seek this? And in a series that is about seeking, it's interesting. This is one of the only ones where he actually doesn't get what he's seeking, right? The ark, he gets it. The government takes it. Yes. The stones, he gets it, but he gives it back. Yes. He doesn't walk away with them. They're not in his closet at home. Like my Star Wars Legos, but he, they do not get this. No one gets this one. And that kind of driving home the point of what you're saying there. What's really beyond it? What's the treasure?
He gets renewal for his father. Not immortality, but more time with his father. He gets a rebirth of his relationship is the treasure that is delivered via the treasure. One of the things that I really appreciated about this, what is the real treasure theme on this view and this idea of letting go, is every time I've watched this film, I've just been really intrigued by young Indiana Jones, its connection to the television show. It's a great scene. But really looking at the way the Cross of Coronado is handled, that we've got two artifacts, two Joneses, and two obsessions. That we know that Henry Jones Sr. has been obsessed with the Ark his entire life, and we get that great teaser of him researching it and writing in his diary way back when. But I forgot that Indy it directly says that he's been looking for the Cross of Coronado his whole life, that this is one of the things that set him on this adventure. And he's got that kind of hooray moment with Brody, where Brody says, "You've been looking for this all my life." And then it's like a sad trombone. It's Indy's happy, but now he's been looking for it forever. Found it. It's sitting in a museum. He maybe gets expensive champagne for free. Right. And then he's just sitting bored and restless in his office. He got the object that he was obsessed with. He kind of set things right. There's a sense that he doesn't have anything else. What did he get out of the journey? And I think that really sets up the much larger story of what are both Joneses going to get out of the quest for the Grail.
I love that moment, and I love that you're bringing it up. We were talking earlier, that Indiana Jones himself says, I'm a professor first, right? That's one of the things, even though, we clearly know he's got other things he's doing here. But that scene I've always gone back to that scene of just like, there's a little comedy beat with all the kids around him, and I'll see each one of them in turn, and he goes in there and hides, and you kind of feel like, oh, that's crazy. Maybe he doesn't want to be there. But I don't even know if that's true based on what Indiana Jones tells everyone else. I think he does want to be there. He does like these jobs. Crystal Skull, one of the driving points is he loses his job and is going to go seek more employment because he needs it and wants it. That's kind of what starts a lot of the journey. So to go to that moment and just have it's such a clear it's a downbeat. I think you're right. I think you're pulling out the spirit of that scene there of him just going, well, it's still not it. I've still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Yeah, this endless search, and which one will make you feel complete. And you highlighted it. I love the amount of characters who question or warn about the quest for the Grail, which I think goes a long way to wrestling with this question of, why do you hunt treasure? And the film's message, I think, is pretty clear that, hey, the father-son relationship, it was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
That's the real treasure. But there's also this element that is asking, I think, about archaeology and about actual treasure hunting. It's Brody, right, who says the search for the cup of Christ is the search for the divine in all of us. So he's got his head screwed on straight. You're talking about the great Kazim moment of ask yourself why you seek the cup of Christ. Is it for his glory or yours? And I think it builds to this kind of nice surprise that Henry Jones Sr. isn't just obsessed with the Grail the way Indy was just kind of obsessed with the Cross of Coronado in an ultimately empty way, that he has this great understanding of the quest for the Grail is not archaeology, it's a race against evil.
Yeah.
In setting those stakes of what archaeology, he says it's not archaeology, but I'll say it is, what these quests are sometimes that we've been watching from Indiana Jones is not about raiding, not about taking something that you shouldn't from a culture that you shouldn't, but that objects have meaning and power and they need to be defended. And Henry Jones Sr. Really sets us up as I'm not trying to get it. I'd like to see it. I'm not trying to get it. I'm trying to make sure Nazis never put their hands on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially as he gets involved in that chase before Indy's brought on board. That's another great moment. And it's we sometimes do say this where it's like a joke, but it's like I think Dr. Jones is telling Indy in that moment of, it's not a movie. It means something more. Yes, it's a movie we're having fun at, but it means something more. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're out here, and that's why we have to go back into the Lion's Den, quite frankly, to get the book and get all the meaning behind it.
Yeah, and it's so great when Indy just yells, "I never understood this obsession," and maybe it was a vain obsession earlier in Henry Jones Sr.'s life, but I like that it becomes this clear idea of it. There are items that need to be safeguarded, and I do think, even though Indiana doesn't get great fulfillment out of finally getting the Cross of Coronado, it was great to really look at the way the Cross of Coronado is discussed. It's very much presented as being raided by Fedora Man, and Panama Man Hat just believes he owns it. So that belongs in a museum quote, which I understand can sound upsetting because it does sound like the real life history of Western people raiding everywhere and stealing people's artifacts and not giving them back. So I understand why people are sensitive about that line in that motivation. But in the context of this film, that is Indiana Jones wanting to safeguard the item from somebody who believes he has an unnatural right to it. So I think the Cross of Coronado and the cup are about a part of our responsibility here is historians and adventurers is to safeguard items.
I really agree with that. I think that's a great quote that's spilled out of the movie, and then now, for good reasons, is brought up in the larger picture of archaeology in general. I totally get that, and we've discussed that on these episodes before. But I really think the full context of the scene, context of the movie, not just of the time, but just of what it's overall saying. I think Indy deserves a little more credit for that line.
Yep. I mean, and I believe it's Fedora Man who even clarifies there's no one left alive who has a claim to it. Allegedly. Yes. Yeah. And one can disagree with that in terms of real world terms, understandably. So what are some other big picture ideas to you? The film has some it says the word faith a couple times.
Faith, a lot of faith stuff in there, indeed. Yes, some great lines about that. Time to ask yourself what you believe. I love Brody's line. If you want facts, Indy, I've got none to give you at my age. I'm prepared to take a few things on faith. And I think that really goes into this idea that it's an Indiana Jones, Professor Jones viewpoint of we're searching for facts. We're not here for truth. That's the philosophy class down the hall. Giggle, giggle. Everyone laughs. But clearly, this is what he's about. He's searching for his truth. And for me, that leads to the search for identity. And Indy going to find what made him. And this is a father-son tale, obviously. And, you youngsters out there, trust me, one day you'll look in the mirror and be like, why am I walking like my father? It's all there. But beyond just the father-son stuff, it's a study of what forms you. The 1912 Utah opening sequence, the image is literally formed, right? And I think nowadays we might be wonder. Luckily, we don't have to wonder, or we won't get to figure out what happened if this movie was released now. We're going to find out with Dial of Destiny, but the opening sequence where you find out how he gets the whip, he gets the scar, he gets the fear of snakes, he gets the outfit, he gets the damn hat. I think some people would brush up against that more than I did in '89. I loved it. I loved the whole sequence. I loved everything about it because I think it is about a study of what forms you. This is a 12 or 13-year-old life scout in the Boy Scouts who's seen someone who he wants to be. And it's not quite directly one-to-one to Han Solo of, I want to be a scoundrel, but deep down I'm a good guy. I think it's the other way of like, I want to do more. I want to find my purpose. In the young Indiana Jones Chronicles, he goes to join the Great War to find a great purpose. That's what he wants to do. And so Indy is in this story, we're years later, 20 plus years later, and he is who he is, but now he really has to go back and analyze what made me. And he is like his father. The jokes of them answering things at the same time. The whole Elsa Snyder bit. It goes beyond that of just, this is who you are. And Indy is learning who he is, and learning what makes him. And I think that also factors into this idea I have of knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing what you stand for might also keep you from, I don't know, selling out your soul for a grail. Right? Because that thing with Elsa Snyder, right from the beginning, I don't believe she's there for the Nazi cause, but that thing with Indiana standing in front of you and says, who you stood with them who stand against everything the Grail, who's is against everything the Grail stands for. Who gives a damn? That whole line that I just butchered. I did write down, but I couldn't scroll down fast enough. I believe that she's like, I don't like this, but you don't know who you are. You don't know what you stand for. So that's why you're losing your grip as you reach for the Grail. And this is a big, giant search for who you are and your identity.
I really love that. I think that's some really great insights about the contrast between the journey that Indy is on, that he's tangled up, he's a raw nerve about this relationship with his father and the possibility of getting closure. The question of how similar or different I am to him, I think is really important. I want to spend some time on that. The academic versus the adventurer is a big thing that spoke to me in this. But to contrast that with Elsa, who thinks that she can have all these divided loyalties. Like, I love that she's a femme fatale who, most likely did sleep with both of them in order to, cause herself to not be suspected by them. But she also legitimately does seem super into Indy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And then obviously the giving her the actual depth, giving that shot of her truly heartbroken by the book burning, really does paint her as a person of divided loyalties, and the person that Indy could be if he were not strong enough.
Yes, absolutely. And didn't truly know.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really wanted to dig into the idea of faith, because I think sometimes I bounce off that in the film a little bit, because it's so overtly, clearly, unignorably religious, tied to a real world religion that many people believe in. Before I get into any of my thoughts, I'm really curious about your reaction to, obviously, the Ark of the Covenant. It's there as well. Other faiths, even if they're not represented faithfully, are there in Temple of Doom. But you grew up in faith.
Yeah.
How does the faith theme affect you? How does it talk to your own real life experiences?
I did. This was one of the reasons I think I was allowed to see this one over other movies, right? And I think it, does a good enough job, I think, explaining some core principles in the Western version of Christianity, however you want to say it, with avoiding any landmine conversation. But also in watching it nowadays, watching this movie in 2023, I still think it gets a lot of things right about what's there at the core. And do you understand the core? Again, going to Elsa Snyder, you might believe in this thing, or you're searching this thing, but you're not acting like all the things that are there. And that those tests at the end, the three tests, are to me, humble, kneel, actually following the in the footsteps of God, which it's not just about knowing the correct spelling for the language of the time. To me, it is, but also like, no, what is it? Not the version you've heard, not the version you just assumed. What's the actual word of God mean? That kind of thing for me, as someone who is who still believes, who still considers himself a person of faith, whatever you want to say there, but has now gotten to the point of like, but I see so many people, so I'm literally burning books of representing one thing and not understanding what that actually is. And this is a movie again about drilling down on what this actually means. And that's why Indy's able to go forward and the others aren't.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I really like what the tests mean, what they represent. I think you can tie it to real life religious experiences. I think for myself, I'll keep this short and hopefully non-controversial. I was raised very Catholic light. Went to church for a long time, but always fun-loving churches that had bands and were explicitly welcoming to people of all kinds. I went to Catholic school from 1st to 3rd grade, which is a confusing time to be taught. Was only parts of the story. But then I bumped a little bit because everything that was being taught to me made sense in terms of the morality of what is the message. I was like, well, from my perspective, I was like, this Jesus person really agrees with Sesame Street. Be kind, be thoughtful. We all have value, and we should all be treated as though we have value. All those things, and then I don't need to go into any details, and I'm not painting with a broad brush. Only talking about my own personal experience. I very quickly, at a very young age, ran into people who were saying, "I believe this," and then doing the exact opposite of exactly what you're talking about. So I think for myself, I have a complex relationship with it. I consider myself a spiritual person. I believe that there is something more. And I think that is what was powerful to me about this. For my own perspective at the moment, I don't need the answers. I feel like the connection between us all, the intuition, things that the Force is playing with, I feel like that's real. That's connection. That's good. And I feel like it is explicitly religious, and people who have a relationship with the religion might get more and different things out of this. But I really like that this idea of faith was tied also to just being open to wonder, to possibility, to myth, to the idea that there could be truth. I love how much early on it's highlighted that Indy has this instinct to make everything tangible. You're talking about the great quotes in the classroom about facts, not truth. We're looking for the actual historical facts that we can verify. Watching that, I thought of his line from the first film of like, I had it in my hand, Marcus. And it paints this picture of Indiana Jones is upset that things can be nebulous, that things can be unknown. And his hunt for artifacts is so that he can take a concept and make it real and touch it with his own hands and verify it. And we as the audience have this great benefit of knowing he's seen some bleep. He's seen the fantastic, and he's still at the beginning of this film rejecting the fantastic. Calling the Arthurian myth of the cup a bedtime story. It's a fun joke where he tells his students X never marks the spot, and then has to eat his own hat, as it were, when it does. But to me, that it's all this buildup toward he wants to cling to the tangible, almost to like a fearful level. I love that it's layered in early on when he's at his father's office and he's looking at that painting, which is such a great setup for the end of the film. Yeah. With the knight stepping into the abyss, he's almost fearful when he turns to Brody and asks him about belief. It's almost like he's really just saying, like, all the things I've seen, all these things that can't be quantified, can't be fully known. I don't like that. I don't like that going after the cup is stepping into that world again I don't like the legendary, mysterious implications. I don't like that I'm going to have to take a leap of faith into the nebulous emotions of my relationship with my father. I don't like anything that I can't physically touch with my hands. I love that is so explicitly and powerfully set up, because it is religious, but it is also just about all of our own relationships of how comfortable are you with, going somewhere and saying, I don't know what's behind this door, but it will make me a better person if I open the door and find out.
Yeah. I always, there's something out there, you express faith every time you sit in a chair and hope that it works and holds you up, right? No, it's funny because this ties into something I've seen, looking around here on the old internet for these movies, and just being in, on social media. Sometimes it comes up of like, well, wait a minute, in Last Crusade, Indy's got these kind of, he doesn't fully believe type of vibe. And he's been possessed. He's watched a heart be ripped out of someone's chest. He actually probably heard the sounds of the wrath of God at the Ark and all those kind of things. And he's, finds the Ark after, and proves that it's real. But I think this isn't a canon answer or whatever. We'll wait for Spielberg to point it out in a doc. But like, to me, what you're describing is exactly it. Of just like, oh yeah, no, I experienced that stuff. I don't like that. I don't want to face that or face that part of myself. That could be a way to look at it for me. That happens in our lives, and in a lot of ways, but especially in the faith ways. And it's not just necessarily about actually proving there's a God or believing or whatever, or this religion versus that religion, but just that like that put me in a very uncomfortable spot where I had no control. I couldn't understand everything I saw, kind of the stuff you're talking about there. I think it's all right for Indy 2 years later, 3 years after Temple, to be like, yeah, no, I like just picking things up that I hold and put in a museum and don't have to ask about it. And by the way, I'm in a young Indiana Jones Chronicles mood just because I've been studying for this project, and I know you watched them last year and we were talking about it. But like, Indy doesn't have as many magical adventures as a kid. It's historical stuff. It's educational, which is what George wanted to do with that series. So this is not completely normal. And a lot of the books and the comics and the games follow the movie vibe, which I think they should, but they're all about that. The Lost City of Atlantis and this stuff and magical aliens and all those kind of things. And that's just kind of what we expect for Indy. But as a character study, I think it makes more sense that Indy doesn't always experience that. So therefore, it's something he has to face down.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And the setup of the Young Indiana Jones show is explicit in the setup initially when he's a kid is his father's going on a lecture tour, and Indiana Jones is going to get experience. He's going to do his studies and he's going to read, but then he's going to physically go places. And, India is not going to be a concept. Sigmund Freud isn't going to be a concept. He's going to physically go to these places, physically meet these people. So in some ways, his drive to say archaeology is done in the library. I look up a fact, I find 3 other sources to support it, and then I physically go to that location. I touch the object with my hands. In some ways, that's trying to be what his father taught him to be.
Yeah.
And then he ends up in this place where to actually get close to his father, to actually save his father, he has to believe in myth, magic, bedtime stories.
Yeah.
And what I ultimately really liked, and I think I've always just been like, hey, I get the theme, leap of faith, cool shot. But what I really liked about this ending is there's plenty of magical thing. He saves his father from a bullet wound with a magic cup of water. But his big leap of faith is the bridge. And the bridge is real. It's a forced perspective painting.
Yeah.
So Indy's leap of faith is, I can't confirm there is solid ground underneath this, but there's a bedtime story. There's a myth. There's all of my experience and intuition telling me there's solid ground if I step forward. And I really like that vision of a leap of faith, of trusting that there's solid ground under the myth.
No, well said. And I love it. And I listen to you describe it. So much of the belief and the understanding of faith, at least the value of faith, does come from Marcus Brody. And one of the criticisms I see of this movie, especially back in the day when you dig into the reviews, was they bring Brody back and he's silly and he's played as dumb, and he has some great comic moments. I think Elliott is just genius in this film. But do not overlook what you're kind of describing. He's the one that's got these quotes. If you want facts, Indy, I've got none to give you. At my age, I'm prepared to take a few things on faith. Search for the grail, search for the divine in all of us. When you're messing with powers you don't understand, there's like the clouds almost crack and lightning almost crack when he says it. And Elsa Snyder is essentially is seeing her future right there. Like, he's got some of the best moments that I think are there for that purpose of Indy. He's not quite a Gandalf guiding Indy along the way there, but I think there's that it's such a powerful connection. I watched you two grow up. I watched you grow apart. He's there, kind of an angel on the shoulder of Indy in some ways for me.
He is, absolutely. He's a father figure in that scene in the father's office early on. It is the moment where the adventure is truly going to begin, and it's Brody who tells him everything that he's going to need to know to complete the journey. Yeah. I want to talk about this idea of the academic in the adventure. Are you good with that?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I really liked, is that ultimately both of the Dr. Joneses have the academic and the adventure in them, but there's a tension to how much weight or how much value to put on either, and which elements of academic versus is adventure brings them closer together versus brings them farther apart. You and I talked about when we did our first episode of Perilous Podcasts about the overview that this is one of the things that's most compelling to me about Indiana Jones, of this combination of books and swagger. I forgot that Last Crusade makes it pretty explicit about the tension between the academic and the adventure. Okay. I love you said a lot of great things in the opening of young Indiana Jones, that this is his journey to become who he is and to make choices about who he wants to be. And I think there's the fun, almost meta. Here's how we got all this stuff that you talked about, that audiences were much more entertained, I think, by the meta of like, that's funny because we know that those are all of his defining characteristics. And it's fun and funny that he got them within one half an hour, one afternoon. Used to be funny to us. Now it is hated.
Yes.
Bad
writing. We didn't ask for this.
Yep. Times change. So I think there's all these great fun jokes there. But I think, to me, one of the most important parts is we see Indy rejected by his explicitly academic father. His father, who is studying, can't be bothered to look up from a book, who only is valuing Indy based on young Indy's academic prowess. I forget what language he tells him to count to 10 in. Is it Greek?
Latin, I can't remember,
Greek or Latin. But he tells him to count it in another language. And we learned something about Indy and that he's been on this journey. But everything about that rejection from his father is coded as academic. And Indy immediately turns to a character, a figure that is a rival, a raider even of the Cross of Coronado.
Mm.
What is this figure of who he could become? An adventurer, the opposite of his father, the opposite of academic. And I think the way that Fedora Man, who the Indy Wiki tells me his real name is Garth, the way Garth puts that hat on him isn't just and that's how he got the hat. It loads the fedora with even more meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the iconography of Indy has always been important. The way he's introduced, how important the whip is, the hat, the silhouette, and the hat has always been I'm an academic and I put on glasses and I teach and go to the library, but then I put on the hat, and it's adventure time. So it's already been coded that way. But I think the film goes out of its way to code it even more as this is a symbol of I took a path to find my own identity. The academic side of me is aligned with my father. But here's this side of me that my father doesn't understand and can't do.
Yeah.
And therefore can't judge me or be better than me at.
It's mine.
The other half of it's the other half of his identity. That fedora is the path away from his father. And I think the fedora gets even more Spielbergian love shots in this film, all the way to rolling back to him at the end of the tank chase when his father's kind of in on the adventure, but also doesn't quite understand how painful it is and what he just went through. While he's sitting around and the hat rolling back to him of you still got to be the adventurer. And I think it's great that the film sets up so much of the iconography of the difference between the academic and the adventurer. And I really forgot that when Henry Jones Sr. shows up, that he's got that contrasting iconography, that he's got a hat, but it's not a fedora. It's a tweed bucket hat. And he doesn't have a gun and a whip. He has a briefcase and an umbrella. That stuff is so beautiful to just really tease out the contrast and this tension of how much of Indy is academic versus adventurer. Who does he truly want to be?
Yeah, and this is wonderful stuff, by the way, here, especially with that hat. I think I don't want to get too grumpy about movie going audiences these days, but when that kind of stuff's done with great purpose, it's really powerful. And I think the opening sequence is for many reasons. But I love, even we're talking about, I'm going to boil it down to simple as I can. And anytime Henry Sr. does something action based, right? It always comes back to some knowledge. I remember my Charlemagne, even the thing that Henry, the pen is mightier than the sword. All that stuff is just great humor. But I think it's all into that as well, where it's a combination, or it's how he gets to the action point, and I love all that. And yes, tying it back to this is what Indy could have. This is what he could own for himself. This is what he could control. His look, his image, his feeling. It's like Dad showed up at work and Dad gets to see what I do, and can't fully understand it or can't do it. I like that.
Yeah, there's this feeling when they first come together that Indy was never going to be a good enough academic for his father.
Yeah.
His father was always going to correct him because his father is of the era and the proclivity that's good parenting to force them to study and correct them when they're wrong. So I love that when they first come together, there's this childlike sense from Indy of my adventuring skills are going to impress him. And some great comedy bits where sometimes yes, other times no, not at all. But as the film goes on, I love that they begin to take turns impressing one another with their skills as academic and adventurer. This isn't a film where it's weighing ultimately which is better. I think it is about them both impressing one another. The way Indy says he's an academic, a bookworm. He's not a field man compared to the great bird umbrella trick. And I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. There's a lot to discuss about the whole sexual encounter, but the shared vitality of the sexual encounter, I would say, is the adventuring side of things.
It's the intersection.
The intersection. But I love that it all builds to once they have got to a point where they realize that one another is the treasure. That I think Henry Sr. has that moment, when he thinks Indy's died, and I just would have needed 5 minutes to tell him everything. And from Indy's side, when his father's laying there shot, they are they know that one another is the real treasure.
Yeah.
And there's this great synergy of academic and adventurer as Indy goes through the trials. It's this balance of knowledge and intuitive action that gets him to the cup. And I just think that there's a beauty in that they are aligned, and I love the way it's cut, where Henry Sr. is whispering the clues as he found them. The academic, he found those clues, and now Indy is taking those clues, that knowledge, and he is turning it into action. It's academic and adventure. I love it.
I absolutely love that, and I love some of the stuff at the end too, towards as it picks up, where Senior has those actual just pure joy smile moments of this is fun. Love all
he
that.
Gets into the spirit of things. Yeah, at first he's not sure about all this violence, but then he really gets into the spirit of it, and is happy to be involved. Yeah. I think I have no idea if this was intentional or not, but it's interesting that Indy's in his adventurer mode with the leather jacket and the hat and the whip, but he's got the tie on the whole time, which is a little bit more of the academic, which is a slightly different look.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that. I definitely could throw it in that theme bucket, but I was having fun with that one today. I've just really, it's like the old, what Han Solo jacket do you like better? It's like, this is a different Indian in the end. A little more buttoned up.
A little more buttoned up. Yep. He's in front of his father. Mm-hmm. I also think that there are beats throughout the film that are fun little sub themes, running jokes that celebrate the academic and the adventurer. I think the value of knowledge is throughout, but I think really driven home by the book burning, by by Elsa's tears. Maybe you learn something by reading books, not burning them. There's really this like anger about like, facts do matter, knowledge does matter. That courses through the film with the Nazi stuff that feels a little bit more real and visceral.
Very real, very visceral, and still apt. Yeah, I agree with that there. And even the whole search for this beginning in a converted church, yes, but a library, a home of knowledge.
A home of knowledge, yeah. The other little kind of adventurer joke that I love that runs throughout is this idea of who knows where they are. Kid Indy says, everybody's lost but me. Elsa says, you're a great deal like your father. He says, except he's lost and I'm not. The jokes about Marcus always getting lost in his own library. There's this, this, if there's a valuing of academic with all of the knowledge stuff, there's a value of being an adventurer in the physical world who knows which way is north.
Yeah. Or the clock. No, I think I absolutely agree with that, and it's
the pointing out the clock.
I mean, it's because it's such a great comedy bit, which we'll have probably a long list of comedy moments. Yeah, and I love that Indy moment too. Everyone's lost but me, and again, search for identity, search for who you are, knowing who you are, and I think going to, Donovan's made his choice. Elsa keeps having the chance to pull back, right? Keeps having a chance to get back on the path, and she still remains lost, and I think that's key.
Absolutely. Any other big picture ideas that you wanted to share?
No, it's interesting though. We're having this discussion about this movie and going in deep on what is there, what we're pulling from it, and I was looking at all the reviews from back in the day. Here's one from the Washington Post reviewed. They reviewed it twice. I'm reading from Wikipedia if anyone wants to look for themselves. Hal Hinson reviewed on the day of the film's release. His review was negative, describing it as, quote, nearly all chases and dull exposition. Although he praised Ford and Connery, he felt the film's exploration of Jones' character took away his mystery and that Spielberg should not have tried to mature his storytelling. That's insanity to me. That's insanity. Sorry, Mr. Hinson.
Everybody has a right to an opinion, and some people get to write them down.
It's like running into someone who's like, they never should have taken Boba Fett's helmet off. I get it, but why wouldn't you want to describe what's find out what's under there? I don't know. This is. I was blown away by that as we were going to go in our discussion of. I'm like, gosh, there's so much in here, and yes, all chases. And by the way, I'll put a pin in the dull exposition. I love the exposition scenes in this film. It's just crazy. But all that stuff's there, and I'm glad Spielberg matured.
Yeah, well, to me, the exposition isn't like even Star Wars, which where I think it's handled well. The Last Jedi hailed is one of the deepest Star Wars films, and I agree with it. Like, but you got some exposition about exactly how the First Order is tracking them, and you got to get through the technobabble. I love Doctor Who and Star Trek, but there's some exposition that's technobabble. There's every bit of exposition that scene with Donovan and Indy when he first hires him is loaded with meaning.
It's great. So great.
Yeah. Did Hal Hinson go back and see it again? You said there were two reviews.
No, someone else. Let's see. I'll bring it up here. A couple of days later, Desson Thompson, published a positive review praising the film's adventure and action, as well as the father-son relationships, thematic depth. So there you go. That's well, you know what? That's sorry. This is wow. What we always say about what you take in there. Desson, Desson Patrick Thompson, former speechwriter for the Obama administration and former film critic for the Washington Post. He was known as Desson Howe until 2003 when he changed his name after uniting with his birth father. So there's someone who's like, oh, I see some things in this film that mean something to me.
Yep. And with the previous review, it is a forever challenge of my life that I just always have to accept, that I love storytelling. If it wants to be pulpy, if it wants to be comedic, and then also have ideas, that there's just always going to be some people that anything other than this is a drama and every moment is telling you it's a drama are just not going to be willing to look under the hood.
Yeah.
And sometimes not under the hood. Sometimes the paint job of the car.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Fascinating detour, but that's all I wanted to. I thought that was a good way to wrap up our deep theme discussion.
That is great. I love our new looking back at old review center. We've always been, for the 4 episodes of this we've done, we've talked about the meaning of the title. What's there for you in The Last Crusade?
There's so many surface level ways to look at it. Obviously, the tied to the Crusades, this being thought to be the last movie, but I think the search for purpose and the search for identity and just the way forward, it's kind of one of the last frontiers for all of us that we have to face as we grow up, and you still have to face it. It's there to the very end. So I chose to go that way. That of all the venturing and all the searching, he's got a lot more to come. Even if we never got another movie, we got to assume Indy didn't retire after this. A lot more to come, but this is kind of one of the final frontiers of his soul for me at this point as well.
No, I really agree with you. There's the explicit that all of this was started with these knights from the First Crusade. So this is the Last Crusade, the end of the trilogy, which is funny. Like, which film is the Last Crusade? Well, it's right in the middle of the 5 films. But I think that in some ways it's like, this is like nothing you've ever gone after before, quote, as a title of like, what is the deepest quest, which is restoring his relationship with his father and his willingness to take a leap of faith. All right. If you are listening on Patreon, I'm going to say we're going to take a quick break, but then we're just going to keep talking. If you're listening after we release this to the public, there'll be an actual break here. So we will be back in a moment. All right. We're back. Did you have a nice rest, Ken?
Long rest. Yeah. Had a big lunch. It was great.
We always talk about big ideas, but we also love, unlike Hal Hinson, chases. So let's talk about some favorite action moments in this big adventure movie. Where did you go, Ken?
Sorry, I have to get back to my notes. I was still on Wikipedia and seeing how they ordered 1,000 disease-free gray rats for the catacombs.
The behind the scenes, that there is a great section about that of Spielberg saying like, we made these rats.
That's amazing. Love that. Anyways, I also had pet rats as a kid, so I love rats. I would not have had a problem going into those catacombs. All right. Sorry. Yeah, the opening train sequence, right? We have to start there. The opening, the chase and the fight. Watching that today, it's so well constructed. It's so well constructed. One of my favorite moments, I put it in comedy as well, but I'll discuss it here, is just when Indy's in the House of Reptiles, and there's that cut to the wide shot of the car as Indy screams. All that kind of stuff. This is just a wonderful, wonderful set piece and sequence here. Edited, the comedy beats, the action, the coordination of it. I really love this sequence. I love everything about the River Phoenix stuff. As I said earlier about the identity stuff, but just it's one of the best action sequences in the whole franchise.
No, I really agree with you. I like everything that's going on there, but getting to the circus train, like you watch the film and you just accept that, but remember somebody had to come up with that of like, okay, we want him kind of in this isolated space. It's this vast expanse of Western America. Well, we could do a train thing. Trains are cool and they're a part of the whole tradition. Well, what if it was a circus train? And it takes on even more significance for Spielberg's life. This is in the Fabelmans movie, but he's been talking about it of like his first film experience was a circus movie, and he expected it to be. He didn't understand when his parents told him they were taking him to a circus movie. He just heard circus and thought he was going to physically see things, but then was moved by the magic of film, and and a director is born, all that. But it's so coded in entertainment of old and adventure of old, of going to the circus and seeing things that you couldn't see, seeing these animals that you couldn't see anywhere else. The fact that Indy uses a magic box, it's really well done action. But the circus part of it is really, really inspired because it makes for like fun, great gags and action bits, but it also ties into the meaning of the film.
Well said. Love that. When Frank Marshall's own Dr. Fantasy kid gimmick that he used to do showing up in the film there, the perfect place for it. All comes together so nicely. Yeah. And it's funny. You talked about it, Tom, about, this being my favorite movie to watch. Often it's because I just want to see this opening. I'll keep watching it, but I just want to see this.
Yeah. A couple beats in it that I love in particular is the swing around the flag. Right. I don't know the technical train term. Apologies to train enthusiasts. But that's shot so well and it's acted so well. That's an Indy, I don't know, I'm making this up as I go moment of figuring out I can grab onto that thing. When he's caught in the snake comes out of the sleeve is so great. So great. And then they using the magic box as an actual magic box is also, there's a little bit of like, okay, how did that actually work? Which reminded me of the beginning of Temple of Doom, where there's the great musical number, but then it transitions from the physical space of Club Obi-Wan to the movie magic of this magical Busby Berkeley number. That is the nature of these films. I've already seen on social media, of course, the discussion of, what parts of the trailer and the clips of Dial of Destiny are realism. This series has never been interested in realism. It's been interested in magic. And this was another beat that reminds you of that.
I agree with that. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah. The other thing I like about this train sequence is just a personal experience. The first time I was lucky to see John Williams, I think it was 2018 at the Hollywood Bowl. It was hosted by Steven Spielberg, and it was a tribute to John Williams. And one of the things that they did is they showed a section of the train sequence, and Spielberg was really funny about it because he played it without music. He's like, bear with me. This is going to be awful. It's garbage without the music. It pains me to watch it, but watch this without music. And he played a chunk, and he's like, we need it with Williams' music. It just is a great demonstration of how much music adds. Not even adds, that completes it. That it's incomplete, deeply, deeply, painfully incomplete without the music.
It absolutely is. It's crazy. It's crazy. I love that stuff.
Yeah. So that was a great moment. What are some other action moments in the film?
Jumping ahead, I said I love rats. I do love rats, but I don't love rats scrambling into a tomb I just turned over into some petroleum while fires erupting. And so the horror of Elsa and the tomb of the night. and the rats coming in. It's a great little beat moment. It's always been terrifying for me. It's the whole sequence is great too, but just though I'm always like, oh man, you just flipped over the guy's tomb, but I guess you got to survive. I think it's a great little moment, and Alison Doodie's so great in this film. Was just still going strong. I wish she'd gotten into was able to do Lord of the Rings like she was offered, but
really?
Yeah, she was originally going to do it, but couldn't get to New Zealand. Couldn't commit to that year and a half or so out in New Zealand. I think she just had one of her children, I think, if I remember the story correctly. But yeah, I think she's great in that moment, and I just love that. It's horror action.
Oh yeah, no, and yeah, I really like that whole sequence, and it is funny to me the beats where the film makes the argument that these objects have value, but sometimes because it's an adventure movie, with such disrespect, and you can make the argument of like it was that or death. It wasn't like Indy was just like, I'm not going to wear white gloves because I don't want to. But it is funny to me later in the film when there's just such reverence, and his father's like, "Did you find it? You found his tomb?" He's like, "There, yeah." And then I desecrated it, and then I dumped this great archaeological historical find into a bowl full of petroleum. But yeah, that one shot in particular, that extreme close up of the rat pulling on Elsa's hair, is a phenomenal shot.
Love it.
Yeah, in the boat sequence, there's a ton that's fun in there, but the inventiveness of the boats being pushed together, and I've got some feelings about all the people who the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword who don't make it, but is an action beat. The boat being crushed between the two ships is pretty cool.
Look, they got a job to perform, right? They're prepared, which is actually in that moment. I didn't know where to put this. We highlighted Kazim before. Kevork Malikian is the actor. That line, "My soul's prepared, Dr. Jones. How's yours?" Everything about that, the commitment, the intensity, the truth in that line, I think it's one of the key things in the building blocks of this movie. It haunts Indy in that moment. It's not just that he needs the information. It's his father. Yes, that's what he's going for. But I think there's a real big truth in that. And it's a line that's action itself, but the entire sequence. But I had that thought too of, those poor saps die horribly. But I guess their souls were prepared. So.
Yep. We can talk about that more in the parts that we questioned or wrestled with. But it was a good action beat. What are some other moments for you?
I went. Where did I go to? I jumped ahead. It's so weird. This action. Here's the thing. This movie's got so much action. Sometimes I just end up watching it and kind of realize I have to put some beats down on my notes. So I jumped ahead a bit to a femme fatale moment of Elsa stealing the Grail. I love that switch again. Talking Alison Doodie as a performer, I love that moment. And it's also tied into Henry Jones. Dr. Jones. She's a Nazi. She's one of them. Don't believe her. That's going on. But Indy doesn't know that. He can't take that leap of faith to trust his father in this moment. He can only trust what he has, in this case, literally touched, which is Dr. Elsa Snyder. And I walked into that. And I didn't mean that, but mean it like that. But yeah, but I love the flip. I love the switch in her eyes, her face, and reaching in and pulling out the Grail diary. I think I said stole the Grail earlier, but the Grail diary. I love that moment. It's a great little beat.
Yeah. No. That scene is powerful, and particularly after the shocking violence of mowing down the Nazis with the full-on machine gun, and Dad just being kind of shocked. I really like the motorcycle chase where they're in the sidecar. There's so much in this film. Everything, I love the film, but it ignites when they come together. And especially the early stuff where they're in tension, and there's such great tension between the academic and the adventurer, and whether or not Dad's going to be impressed. But the father kind of tagging along in a sidecar is such a funny image. In the joust move it's so great to see these cool adventure moves through somebody else's eyes. It brings them back to reality just a little bit of like, that was violent.
Yeah.
And it makes the action more exciting.
Yeah. Man, damn.
Yep. But I love the joust move. That's so weird and fun and inventive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that flip is one of my favorite moments too. Just it's so speeder, it's all speeder bikey to me too.
Yeah,
same energy. So I like.
Yep, yeah, and I hadn't known. I learned this from the behind the scenes documentary that they added that later because they thought they needed a little bit more action, and they shot it near the Lucasfilm compound there.
That and that's part Dagobah for a little bit, right? And then Luke burning Vader. You should just do a tour around the Skywalker.
See which things have been burned or jousted there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other beats for you?
I do love the whole. It's again bigger sequence for the fire pit escape when they're trapped. Just the comedy of it is amazing, but putting that together and just I'm always in my head. I always think of like, okay, if I was in that situation tied to a chair with my dad and there's fun, how do I get out? Like, how do you figure this out? In fact, that Indy, who always makes it up as he goes along, is able to find a way out, even by accident. I just always love that sequence. I love the flip around of, again, the comedy's great. Inspired Mindy Sterling's character for sure in the Austin Powers series, that the German officer there. The bullets, when they fire in the bullets and they shoot, they bounce off the fireplace. Love it.
Yeah, no, that whole thing is great, and and again, not realism. The way that one little lighter lights that entire place up so quickly, I
was thinking that today. I was like, I can't start a fire pit fire in my backyard with a lighter. Like, you're just.
Yeah, this is why when you actually get a permit for filming these days, and you're going to use fire, you need to prove that the things you're using are coated against flames. Because I guess this is how easy it is for an entire room to light up from one Zippo. I'm sure we'll talk about it in comedy as well, but just as an action move, the inventiveness of it, the using the umbrella to fly the birds into the plane, it's just. It's a great action move, and I love that it is an action move, and it like has a good relationship to the famous joke in Raiders, where I'm not going to have a long involved whip fight with you. I'm just going to shoot you because there's a simpler answer right in front of us.
Yeah. Now look, sacrificing birds, not my first choice, but again, life or death, I'll do it.
Nope. From there, I just went to the big tank chase. There's a ton in there. But anything before we get to the tank chase?
There's so much energy in it. I love the momentum of that sequence once it really gets going. And by the way, did you know this is one of the ones I didn't know. Nick Gillard is in that tank.
Oh yeah, I knew. I've known that one for a while because I was obsessed with Nick Gillard and all the behind the scenes stuff in the prequels. There was, the time on the StarWars.com website where they were releasing those previews building up the film. And every time I could hear a single word out of Nick Gillard's mouth, I was obsessed with that man.
Didn't know it. And is the Periscope looking guy. My favorite. So I was trying to think, what's my favorite part of that sequence over the years that I've always enjoyed, and it's plugging up the tank's side gun. He puts that rock in there. I've just always loved that. Ingenious. Would it really work? I don't know. I don't need anyone from MythBusters to prove it. I just want to know. Just want to do it, I should say.
There's a ton of great moments, but the one that really spoke to me is the leap from the horse to the tank,
which was an award-winning move. So yes.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean that, and it makes sense. It's total death-defying type of shot. That's normally two shots. It's normally a leap and a land. So to have it in one, and there's that the way the stunt person's arms like flail a bit, it almost like. Not full on comic bird flapping, but there's a flail to the am I gonna make it?
Completely.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, I would not have known that off the top of my head, to be clear. In doing research this week, it's Vic Armstrong, and he won some sort of stunt award for it. So it's great.
As well he should. I also did like the bullet through 3 Nazis. It's a great, violent, horrible, funny image.
Yeah. Well, it's just that's quintessential Indy right there with the shrug and all right. Yeah.
I didn't know these had that. Yeah, I didn't know these had it in them. And I do like we were talking about when Dr. Henry Jones Sr. starts to get into the action, and I like that his anger is being riled up, and now he's seen his son do this, and now he's ready to fight, and I really like the ink squirt and the getting the gun and everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. It goes beyond just the joy too. There's that that's present, but yeah, great purpose behind it.
Yeah. All right. Should we do it? Should we get into comedy and see how long this takes us?
Yeah. Let's do this. I will. One thing. I have one final one. When you see the breath of God, that terrified me in the theater. I thought it was real.
Oh, yeah, understandably, and just like the actual horror of how many people are they going to send in there to just keep trying, and heads are going to keep rolling out. What are you going to do? It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
Pretty
anyways.
awful.
Always love that bit. But anyways,
I think I think I've seen people make this joke, and it is funny to me that there's this great logic and intuition to the penitent man kneels. Like, okay, does the penitent man also roll forward?
Yes, correct. Yes. Yeah, I think by that time when you kneel, you're in an enlightened state, so you feel the threat.
You sense it, yeah. But I do like the idea of, as a kid, I think I would have been more excited about going to church if we kneel and action roll.
Kneel and dive.
Kneel and dive. All right, let's get into comedy. I stopped. I got real choosy after a while because this to me is a deeply funny film, and I feel like almost every one of Sean Connery's lines and almost every one of Brody's individual frames of film are hilarious.
Yes. Well, yeah. No, it's so funny you say that because when I was watching it this morning before the show, was at the tank scene where Indy crashes, and Grace came home and she just stared at the screen and she starts laughing, and she's laughing at Denholm Elliott just not even doing anything, just reacting to the crash, just reacting to Indy coming back. He's just every frame. You're right. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and he does play that dramatic role, an important role early on, and then when he gets out into the field, just so damn deep in his bones, naturally funny. Yes. Anyway. So I definitely have some Brody moments, but I didn't write down every single one. I'm going to start with the whip crack to the chin.
Okay, like
that to me is it is a joke that is maybe what the answer is that the meta joke of we're going to explain where something that you, the audience, know came from. The textual, we all know that Harrison Ford has the scar, so this is how he gets the scar that Harrison Ford really has. To me, is funny. I think it is just one of those jokes that is probably in the category of been done too much, so now people are really hostile towards it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. I don't want to come off as angry against modern audiences, but sometimes I am. But my reaction in the theater was, oh, that's how he got it. Like that. That's all I did. That's all I said. I laughed and went, oh, great.
Yeah, it's legitimately funny to me. It's a contrast of what the audience really knows and the fiction of the movie. So that's where I start with that bit of hilarious comedy. A young man permanently scarring himself. Where do you go for comedy?
I'll skip a couple we already discussed from that sequence and other things, but I'll go right to the banter of the old school Hollywood picture banter between Elsa and Indiana when they first meet in Venice. I love her line that looks like the best parts have already been spoken for. And I love Brody in that kind of being like, all right, okay, we got some stuff we're doing here. I love the energy of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting development, not a development. I'm so fascinated by the trajectory of Indy as romantic figure, because clearly with everything they're pulling from, there's always a romance, but the first one starts off so deep and so sincere, and it's about a deep connection. And like we talked about in Raiders, he's too tired and beat up to make it too physical. And then in Temple and in Last Crusade, you just have to accept, well, a part of Indy's character is he's a horn dog that he finds great satisfaction in great physical beauty and connection. And it's not explored too much. It's I think kind of an inheritance from the James Bond thing, but the roots of the James Bond thing in literature is like, I'm gonna die tomorrow every day. That's my entire life, and I am hungry to feel alive. And this the sexuality and the womanizing is from an explicit perspective of, please make me feel alive for 5 minutes.
Right.
And we don't really get explicitly in the films what in Indy's soul is being fulfilled. It's just it's just almost cartoon, like wolf. Eyes pop out, tongue rolls down, the lines and the flowers come out, and here we go.
Yeah, and that's what clearly one of the big differences between this and Raiders, along with Temple, right? And I wonder too if you were to, again, the old make these movie now things, it wouldn't that maybe Marion would have just been around. Maybe they would have explored it a little differently. I don't know, but they definitely turned it into it became like I said, the Bond thing indeed. But just this is how you made a movie. You had a leading man, you had a lady, and they did the smooching, and we went on with it, kids. Yeah, it was,
they did the banter and the smooching. Yep. But I like how I love that you pointed it out, because I think it is very funny, because it's just so like, okay, here we go. Let's do we're doing this. And I do really like that she is super into it. The Austrian goodbye, the German goodbye is a funny beat, but I do like that she seems like, I'm really legitimately, that was really great, and I'm super into this, and it's too bad.
From the catacombs, watching him with the lip bite, she's there. Yeah. Both of them are enjoying life at that moment.
Yep, exactly. I'm going to go back even a little farther. You mentioned the line, and it's an important line thematically. But I do like his classroom line of, if it's truth you're interested in, Dr. Tyer's philosophy class is right down the hall. I paused to write that down, and I was laughing. I think it's legitimately funny. Good joke, Professor Jones, Dr. Jones. And then I was so happy when I turned the film back on, and he actually did get a laugh from the class, because he deserved it.
He deserved it. Well earned.
Well earned laugh.
And the best thing is, he probably says that at every semester. It's probably fine.
Yeah. But it also, I love how grumpy he is about it, of like, that's not what we're discussing. I think maybe it hits for me because in my liberal arts journey, I've had some philosophy classes, and some classes that are not supposed to be philosophy classes, where some students want to disappear the conversation into a rabbit hole of a very philosophical question of truth. And those conversations often ended up being somebody being kind of smug because they think they've broken through by proving you can't prove anything. Like, cool, great. So there was a grumpiness in Indy that I've actually seen in some professors of like, we don't discuss that in this class.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
Also, the kids clamoring at the window of his office like they're at a Beatles concert is funny.
Oh, yeah. Exploding out the I love you moment from Raiders into this. It makes perfect sense. I love that.
Yeah, and it's almost like the students, obviously, he's been away and they need things, but it's not just like women fawning over him. All the guys are there too, and maybe some of the guys are fawning over him, but it's almost like more like everybody's just magnetically drawn to the charm of him. Like, and it's not necessarily sexual. It's just charm, and also he needs to answer my question. I love that.
Yeah, love that.
What are some other moments for you?
So going back to Venice here, I have always loved it's one that as a kid you're going to laugh a little maybe harder, but the librarian stamp bit always worked for me. It's so well played, great performer, that Einstein looking librarian there. I've always loved that bit. It still works for me.
Yeah, no, that's one of those moments of like, well, Indy's doing what he has to do. He's desperate to find his father. Being in this beautiful museum church and smashing it with a stanchion is painful to me. And it's made much better by that great library stamp gag.
Yeah, just to like, all right, it's meta in a way of like, he couldn't get away with this. How is he going to get away with it? And that's how they pull it off. Love it.
Yep. Yep, I do. This is one where I also think maybe modern audiences wouldn't be on board of it with it because it's too referential. But passing the image of the Ark of Covenant and her going, are you sure? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I love this great Harrison Ford underplayed delivery of, you as the audience member just flashed to just all of the hell he went through.
Yeah.
No, it reminds me of some of those like Twitter battles you see where, some jerk comes at someone correcting them about like, rocket science. And they're like, I am a rocket scientist. Trust me. Great stuff there. One other Venice thing for me, I really like the Venice through line. It's a kind of different kind of comedy beat of the number of times that, Indy goes to interesting, fascinating, but dangerous, remote, hard to physically exist in places a lot, jungles and deserts. And I love that he's got this like, Venice.
Yeah.
I could just be sitting here having a cup of espresso.
Yeah.
That's such a fun through line.
I love my favorite one is when he emerges from the catacombs in the cafe, just covered in soot and petroleum and rats and just, Venice, just so great.
It's a great contrast between the world that he operates in and the class of Venice for sure.
Love that.
Where do you go from Venice?
I go to the Skendron, right? That is the ancient city of Alexandria. But when Sala meets Brody, that whole sequence, number one, I love Sala. Having him around is always great. But trying to protect Brody and that from the Nazi dipping his head and Brody dipping his head back to papers. Yes, I was just reading the papers and that run. Yes, run. What are you saying? Run. That is just perfect comedy for me. Gets me every time. Yeah,
the Brody, the cut to Brody, the big buildup of the Indy overselling Brody's ability to escape, and I like that we clarify later that he was overselling it on purpose because otherwise it would maybe feel a little heavy-handed. But we, the audience, don't necessarily know that element of Brody, so I think yet, so it's believable that maybe he is this seasoned of a world traveler. So the cut to him wandering, and maybe this is a famous line that people know. I'd never heard the no water, fish make love in it. I'd never heard fish make love in it before, and oh my Lord, is that funny?
That's hilarious, right? Oh God, Brody.
Yeah,
love that. I think it's always worked for me because Walter Donovan sells it for me because he stops and turns around, right? Like because they're like, oh, Brody sticks out like a sore thumb, and Indy's just intensity with it. I always think Walter Donovan sells that joke well because he's like, well, wait a minute, what do I know? I don't know this about Brody. Oh crap! And then, fish make love.
So easy, yeah. Going back to a little bit earlier in the initial interactions between Indy and his father. Again, I'm trying to be real selective, but I really I should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
Yeah.
One of the first time that he's angry, I don't know, how much you've watched the Marx Brothers films. I love the Marx Brothers films. They were very instructive to me as I was starting comedy, and particularly those films are such a marriage of rapid fire verbal comedy with heightened, bizarre physical comedy, combining with that, with the fact that, it's basically like saying I should have, mailed it to Will Ferrell now. Like this is their moment. It's a modern reference given the date of the films occurring in. I love that.
Yeah, I always loved it because around this time, maybe a couple years prior to this, my parents had, I don't know what happened. They purchased a ton of VHS tapes that were all Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy. And we used to watch them all. And that would just be like a Saturday afternoon. I'd put on a Laurel and Hardy picture, something like that. And Marx Brothers. And we had some friends of the family, like one of those, they'd come over to our house. We'd go over to theirs, type of childhood family friends type of thing. And all the adults we'd put in Marx Brothers stuff and laugh and watch. And the adults would laugh at things we didn't get. But so when Sean Connery says that, I was so happy. I had the reference. Didn't need someone to explain it. Didn't need an older person to explain what it was. I got it.
That's so great, and there's a lot in Marx Brothers that's quite subversive, which is funny, given what I know about your He-Man concerned parents.
Yes, it's funny what they miss, but anyways.
Also, the she talks in her sleep revelation that's funny by itself, but the extreme long, awkward glances and take like that right there is the magic of the film, and to me, like, why it is the best film in terms of the comedy. That's the kind of thing of like both those actors are in it and being playful. You don't get that unless the actors are really being playful and seeing like, how long can we extend this beat? Like, somebody just doing a pat version of this would be the double take from Indy and then kind of like a whimsical shrug from the father, and it'd be this pat joke. Instead, it's this just like long amount of processing, and are we going to talk about this, and layer after layer of comedy.
No, I love it. And before anyone out there tweets us, yes, this is an ad lib from Connery that decided to put in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the exact take. They could have found something else with it, but so it just adds to the legend of the moment. That's actors, like I said, playing, actors being in the character, being in the moment. Love everything about it. And it's a great reveal. And this was supposed to be revealed later on. And that I'm glad that doesn't happen. It needs to happen right here.
No, it's great because it sets up this weird tension in their relationship of what are some other moments for you?
I jump into we are kind of jumping around a little bit even right before this. Tapestries, and just saying it in a bad accent is a long running bit for me and some of my friends. Like, just one of those, like, I could text them now and say, like, I'm here to see the tapestries, and they'd respond in kind. So I've always loved that bit. And that's again when a movie comes out at that right time in your life where it just the lines and the beats never leave you.
Yeah, it's a funny beat. It's a little bit broader humor, and there's a lot of pretty big, bold, broad humor throughout Indiana Jones.
Totally.
But that's even more like cartoonish.
Yeah.
There's that great Indiana Jones, I've got an idea. I guess that's a Han Solo line. But that great, like, I don't know, I'm making this up as I go. I see a surprising detail that other people have missed, and I pull off something weird.
Yeah.
And it's a weird gambit that doesn't work at all.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I guess it gets him in the door enough, but the guy's not going for it in the slightest, and he just has to deck him. How do you feel about that? Does that make it funnier to you that this is like one of Indy's improvisations that does not work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's making them up a go along theme. Doesn't mean it all flows nicely, and how there was probably a thought when she asked him in the car, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know. And you see him kind of look at her outfit, but there's probably a brief moment where he's just going to kick the door down. Get back to that's funny.
Yeah. I think for me, it's an action moment, but it's more a comedy moment. One of my very favorite beats is in that motorcycle chase with the sidecar, where Indy does these super violent jamming the pole in the wheel, and the huge great action moment of the Nazi bike flipping, and then Indy smiles, is so pleased with himself, and I love how just unimpressed and bored the fidgeting with the watch is inspired. Of like, I don't know why it's kind of shocking and awful. I don't know why you expect me to be impressed by that.
Running late. Yeah.
Yep. Love it. Other moments for you.
I do love "This Is How We Say Goodbye in Germany" moment, Dr. Jones. I love that double punch. Always funny. There's a running bit pops up every now and then. Definitely on the airplane. There's a couple beats before, but the running bit of Dr. Jones messing up but not admitting it. Just kind of hiding it to Indy, like son, they got us. There's a lot of that pops up. And when he lights, the floor's on fire. He does not say I lit the floor on fire. The floor's on fire. I just love that popping up.
Yeah, no, and that is what's so fun about this. It is this. They both sort of want to prove something to one another and don't want to admit their weaknesses or be seen with weaknesses. And yeah, the mowing down the tail is great. And then they got us.
Love that. Dude.
Hitler signing the book is it's a tension beat, but it is, to me, it's a joke. I knew about that beat before I saw the film. I think my brother must have come home and told me about it.
was it in a trailer? I was going to maybe.
It might have been in the commercials or the trailer.
Yeah. That's how I knew it.
Yeah. But I think it's a great comedy beat amidst the true horror of what's going on there.
Yeah. And one of those Tote Ronald Lacey is Heinrich Himmler in the background there. Yeah, it's he's there for a second. There's one shot. He's right behind Hitler as they're walking up to Indiana Jones. So funny little cameo there. But I love that. And of course, Admiral Ozzel, there he is. Michael Sheard playing him.
Yep.
So, love that beat as well.
Yeah. And he does a great job in a big role for Michael Sheard.
Yeah.
Final joke for me is, I think that why are you sitting there resting when we're so near the end is hilarious from the perspective of this renewed vigor and vitality that Henry Jones Sr. has. And then I think it benefits from the audience's relationship with Indy and knowing how much this kind of action takes out of him, that he is he's an action hero that gets wounded, going back to Raiders of, oh, God damn it, Indy, where doesn't it hurt? Yep. And knowing that he's just in horrific pain.
I really agree with that. It's one of the things that makes Indy so relatable. You know, we think we can do this. He's hurt. We're hurt like him too. Shows up.
Yeah. And it also feels like there's a meta element too, of like, almost a filmmaker's joke of like, don't slow down the pacing at the end, almost like it's kind of thumbing their nose at a network or studio note. Right. Cut out that beat. It's too near the end.
So funny. Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Any other comedy moments for you?
Two I want to discuss. You're right. We do classic ones, No Tickets, great, all that kind of stuff. I forgot they used that bust of Hitler to trap the Nazis in the burning room there and the escape. I love that little beat.
Yep.
Very Spielbergian. The two moments that are just so, one's absurd. I love the Nazi pilot when he goes into the tunnel and his plane's going past their car, and the way he just stares at their car. Just one of my favorite awkward comedy beats. I love that beat. So that's good. Then my final one is Sala, man, Jonathan Rhys Davies. That car belonged to my brother-in-law. It just yeah, he tries to get the camels to pay him back, blah, blah, blah. But that's a great read of that joke. I love that.
Yeah, it's a very funny joke, and there's so much going on, and I'm glad that Saul is back, but we don't get to spend as much time with him, and he is a little bit of a mentor figure and a figure of wisdom in Raiders, and that is not needed in this film, in this moment. But it so connects back to Saul being like, "Oh, Indy, I'll help you do all your wild bonkers stuff you got to do, but I got mouths to feed. I got a family. I got a life." You know, it ties into that.
It's such a character moment. It's comedy from something real. But it just, there's so much going on. The Brotherhood's attack and the tanks fire belong to my brother-in-law. Like I love that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely great. We could list comedy moments for longer than the film itself, so we're going to move on. Is there anything that you struggle with or question in this film?
Not a big way. Obviously, there's so much joy for it, and there's perhaps a little bit of the youthful goggles on sometimes. But I said some stuff earlier, like it's definitely late '80s, and it feels that way. I think there's I get. Years later, I can understand why people are like, hey, it was just, you could write this off as a retread of the first one. I don't think that's accurate, but I understand it. I understand the vibe. And I talked about some of it earlier with Spielberg. Like, I obviously I love where they ended up on this, but for him to, I guess I just get bummed for him that he just felt like, I hope he didn't feel like he had to do this. And I think you're right to touch on, like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it my way, or put some heart and spirit and a big theme about father and son stuff into it. Clearly he does. But if there's just like this, damn it, we got to do this. We got to do it right again. I just think it's not fair to Temple. It's not even fair to Raiders. I don't know. It's just sometimes part of that legend of the story. It goes. Sorry, it goes into some stuff we talk in Star Wars too. When we know too much of scoop culture, and we know the director got fired for this, so this, all that kind of stuff. It's impossible not to know it. But how you take that into your viewing, or you take that into your discussing the film. I think you can discuss this film in a way that slags this film off because, well, even Spielberg just wanted to do the same thing again, and none of that's necessarily true. None of it's quotes, but that's the vibe around the conversation. So I don't know. Maybe I don't need the movie to be any different, but that's always kind of been one thing that's bummed me out a little bit. That maybe we were all depressed. We failed in the last one. Let's do it again. No, you didn't necessarily fail, and you didn't need to do the same thing. So I don't know. You know what I mean?
I like that the three films end up being very different than one another in tone.
They are,
and I think there is this, to me, fascinating, enjoyable wonkiness of Lucas has done this Star Wars trilogy, and it plays out in this very specific way because it's linear, and then this trilogy is fascinating because it gets wonky because with the prequel and all sorts of different elements, but tonally it is so similar to the original trilogy of Star Wars, where the first one is just this explosion of discovery that is playing with it in ancient form, but entirely reinventing it for a new and modern audience and creating its own myth and its own canon. Then the second is darker, and the characters absolutely go through it. And Last Crusade is so Return of the Jedi of it's brighter and it's happier, and it's even in its comedy, it's a little broader and a little cuter.
Yeah.
And there's the emotional equivalent of Ewoks present in terms of just the brightness of it. And it ends on the victory. It's ultimately it's a feel good film. And I know, like our friend Mark Ellis says, hey, I want to feel good, so I watch Return of the Jedi. They win in that one. And I feel like that emotion is present here as well.
Yeah, no, which is why even what I'm saying is like I don't want this movie to be anything different than it is. I think that's great, and there's little things along the way. I would love to see, it's so you're right. This is George is like, I've got a trilogy, but it never really has truly felt like that to me. It has just felt like chapters in an ongoing adventure, which is why I don't have a problem with them trying a fourth movie, whether you like it or not. I enjoy it, but I'm glad with that. I'm glad we're gonna have a fifth one. If there's ways to tell the story with other characters or play in this universe, it's great. But it doesn't have to be super, super connected like the Star Wars thing does. But I know I would have loved to see. It's not just Marion and Short Round and Salo, like you mentioned, and everything. Like I think Jonathan Rhys-Davies said they thought, was it Crystal Skull that they were going to bring him back, but he was like, it wasn't a role worth the character at this point in my life and career. So I'd love to see a little bit more of that development with Indy along the way. And not just as simply as Short Round coming back, but what is his relationship with Short Round? What does Short Round do with him there? I wouldn't have minded that. If I was on a YouTube show in '89, I probably would have asked for that.
Yeah, and I think that is the thing that I struggle with as well. Of like, they initially made a trilogy, but everything about the idea of Indiana Jones is serial adventure and what James Bond had been very successful at here are the ingredients. They change from time to time, but we also do have the ingredients, and every 2 years, here's another James Bond adventure, and you kind of know what to expect by a James Bond adventure, but will also surprise you.
Yeah.
And that to me seems like the heart of Indiana Jones, and why I'm glad that it continued and there's a fourth and fifth film.
Yeah. I agree with
that said, the weird thing of one of the motivations of doing the prequel for Temple of Doom is we didn't want to answer the question, where's Marion? So then we go forward in time and we still don't.
Yeah.
And obviously the fourth film reckons with that. We get our answer later. But if I was on a YouTube show in '89, that would have vexed me of an answer to where Marion is, because I think it could have played into the themes. There's an anger from Indy that his father's obsession with the Grail, there's an implication that it made things worse with his mother, who passed. Not like his obsession with the Grail killed her. I'm not saying that, but there could be a little bit more of a tit for tat of, well, where did Marion end up, Junior?
Yeah. No, I really agree with that. The fact that it wasn't even a mention, so to speak, and you could look at it too simply as canon answers or something like that. But just what does it mean for Indy? That apologies, Hal Henson. I would have liked them to go deeper into the on that. And I think it was probably less questioned at the time, which is a bad thing. You're right, because this is just. I mean, you're literally. This is no disrespect to Alison Doody. I think she's wonderful in this film. Goes on to have this still ongoing career. But I mean, you can't ignore that it was, Karen Allen's being replaced by a 21-year-old, and that kind of trope of just the business. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone involved in this production. It's just no one questioned it. That's what you did, and then we started questioning it later on, as we should. So yeah, that's part of what maybe the disappointment is.
Yeah, no, and I agree that it is better that we question those things now. One of the extras on that disc that I keep talking about is a round table, I think at AFI, with the women of Indiana Jones, and it's a very short clip of them talking. And the joke that Alison Doody keeps making is like, well, the romance was with Sean. Sean took my role, so like I had a very different role. You can't really compare it to Marion or even Willie, because the relationship was with Sean's.
Yeah, that's insightful. True.
Yeah, and a funny joke. The other thing for me is it is what it is. The Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword being wiped out. There's like first in the boat chase. It's a great turn that Indy realizes, like, oh, we don't need to be at odds with one another. These are not the people responsible for kidnapping and possibly hurting my father. And fair enough, they chased Indy first, but the fact that he's got this kind of like, oh, hey, sorry, buddy, attitude with Kazim, where after so many people died in that chase and then
I get you.
I understand that there's a tonal thing. This film is trying to be fun and forward moving. It slows down just a little bit to honor Kazim and the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword, but they're just wiped out by Nazis, and it's we don't get to feel the weight of that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Kazim's the only one you get to know, and I think it's he's great when he's got those moments. But yeah, I again, something that maybe you put together. I don't know, maybe you don't, but maybe you put together a little differently if you do it now or reapproach it. I agree with that.
Yep. We talk about it all the time with Star Wars. There's, Star Wars is built to be the first film, a fun adventure movie where the genocide of a planet happens and we move on pretty quick.
Yeah. It's just a Tuesday for Indiana Jones. Someone chased him in a boat. They blew up.
Just a Tuesday, but I did want to bring it up because it does have the extra issue, unlike the Death Star, of some real-world representation issues in this context.
Indeed.
All right. We are just about out of here. I think we're going to beat the runtime of the film on this episode. We exceeded it on Temple of Doom. But is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to for The Last Crusade?
No, thrilled to get to this one. And it's always fun. I mean, I'll probably be watching it in 2 weeks anyway. So good to get to
If I had time, I'd rewatch it tonight. The thing that I wanted to mention is this is a fabulous Indiana Jones film for fans of classic Doctor Who. Julian Glover has a long and sterling career, but he plays the baddie in one of the most celebrated Doctor Who serials, City of Death, that they did film parts of in Paris and actually go to the top of the Eiffel Tower, just like you did recently. Yeah, Julian Glover is so phenomenal. And then we obviously know Michael Sheard is Admiral Ozzel, but he is in several classic Doctor Who episodes. He's in some of the very greatest. He's in an episode called Mind of Evil. He's in an episode called Remembrance of the Daleks, which is one of my very favorites. And he's in probably my very favorite Doctor Who serial called Pyramids of Mars, which on a lark is just like, I had a stressful day and Sarah wasn't home. And I was like, I need a frozen pizza and comfort television. And I put on Pyramids of Mars, entirely forgetting that Michael Sheard is in it. And it's a riff on the old Mummy film. So it's about archaeology and accidentally unearthing powers that you maybe shouldn't. So I watched that and then went right into Last Crusade. So it was a great Michael Sheard double feature.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
All right, Ken, here's my fun question to wrap up. What object would you risk your life to grab while dangling over a bottomless pit?
Nothing. I gotta let it go. It might be lunch. I'm notorious for picking up things I drop and eating them after the 5-second rule. It's not long, folks, but it might be a good Uncrustable. But other than that, I gotta tell you, when it comes to like items, unless it's a dog, Grace, I have the ability to let it go. Maybe because this movie was in my life.
Well, I should have let you go last because that's a much better ending than any BS I'm going to say. I like that the 5-second rule is also the bottomless pit rule.
Yeah.
You pick it up within 5 seconds is fine. Don't pick it up if you're risking falling into a horrific chasm.
I'm notorious for eating table French fries. So.
Come on. That's no problem.
Yeah.
That's no. Do people know where plates have been? Horrible. I'm working on getting better at letting go. I think in some sort of bigger philosophical ways, I'm very affected by the Star Wars lessons. These lessons are great discussions about letting go. I'm struggling with it with physical objects.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at my original 1980 Yoda. If Yoda was on the edge of a chasm, I'd probably take a risk.
It's worth it. Well, to clarify it and kick it back to you here, like I'll hold on, like when it comes to like physical things, collectibles and things that mean, like I hold on to them for a very long time. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're gone. Like my Y-Wing, my original Y-Wing, I had that for 30 plus years and it was broken. It was beat up. The batteries didn't work. And then I did that move and I looked at it and went, now's the time. And I went to the dumpster, tossed it and didn't look back. And it's just like that. So maybe it's this movie of a lifelong obsession. The Grail, Dr. Jones, let it go. Maybe I learned from this movie more than I realized.
Yeah, you know what? I'm struggling with physical items because it is just, there's a lot of loss in life and aging is losing a part of your life. And I got an instinct to cling to especially endowed objects that have any kind of memory. And like, I've got the memory. I know that's the answer of like, I know what this means to me, and it will still mean that to me if I never see it again. But I'm struggling with clinging to it. But in terms of experiences, I think I like what you're saying of I've been better about making choices. If I only have so much time, so I'm not going to stop being a performer. I can perform anytime I want. But right now, I'm not going to do this one particular stand-up show. That's okay. It will still be there if I want to go back. So thanks, Last Crusade, for helping me say no to a stand-up show.
Love it.
All right, Ken, take us home.
Yes, I will take us home. Let's get on the horses and ride off into the sunset. But the adventure continues. Thanks for listening to Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcast, whether it's on Patreon, where you support us, or later on when we release these episodes to the public. If that happens to be you now and you want to find more of us, we're on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. You can also find us on Facebook at Force Center Podcast, and Hive Social. We'll see, wherever other places pop up when we get invites, we'll try to pop up there for you all as well. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, and more. Just search, you'll find us. And as a lot of you know, because you're hearing this now, you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. Follow me at Napzok or go to Napzok.com for more. Sir, you have the final horse ride out of here. Where can I find you?
Well, yeah, I'll go try to save Brody in another beautiful comedy moment of flailing on a horsey, which is what I would do. So that's where you can find me, either on social media at Joseph Scrimshaw or flailing on a horsey. Either of those places are good places to find me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been a Perilous Podcast.